As the founder of Haydenshapes surfboards, Hayden Cox is one of Australia's most in-demand designers. When he's not shaping custom surfboards at his factory in Mona Vale in Sydney's northern beaches, you might find Hayden alongside brands like Audi, Google, Samsung, Alexander Wang and Westpac. Growing up in Sydney away from the beach, Hayden had no connections to the surf industry. He was an outsider who catapulted to global fame in his 20s with the Future Flex technology, his revolutionary approach to materials and manufacturing. But spending 2 decades building something from the ground up, there were always going to be moments of failure too. Lessons learned the hard way, some that almost broke him. It's those moments that Hayden's global success has depended on. I mean, you sell surfboards in more than 70 countries around the world, but here in Mona Vale, which is in Sydney's northern beaches, this is your custom manufacturing factory. Tell us what goes on here, basically.
Well, this is kind of like the heartbeat of the brand and where we design our product and prototype, as well as then build the customised versions of all the boards that we design and build for customers all around the world. So in this facility here, I'll build boards for our athletes, I'll build all our prototypes, and then the custom boards that we will ship out to all our customers around the world. So I guess there's a lot of creativity in this building. There's a team of around 30 staff in the production facility, including an apprenticeship program. And it's a really fun place to be in, and it's a great incubator for design ideas.
But in surfing particularly, you've really transformed that industry in a lot of ways that we'll talk about today. How do you feel when you think about the last 20 years where you started, in a factory, probably not too dissimilar to this, to where you are now and travelling all over the world as you do?
I think the thing that when I reflect back and look at that journey that I've been through is I feel like I'm still in that journey first and foremost. Every challenge that I've been sort of thrown at over those 20 years, I still feel like I'm being thrown bigger challenges today. And I really enjoy thriving on that learning process and getting better. And I guess now having 20 years of experience, you can use that to make better decisions and not make the similar mistakes in the past. For myself, the surfing and the surfboard industry is an exciting space. And to see other brands go out and innovate technologies and bring different constructions into their product lineup is kind of like a realization that what I designed with the Future Flex technology was needed and it was wanted in our industry. And it's exciting because it just opens up the mindset of the consumers to want to buy boards that have different design applied to them and different experiences of how they ride. So for me, it's a really exciting space at the moment. I think there's 2 sides of innovation that will happen in surfboard manufacturing. The first will be the process and moving towards more of a sustainable manufacturing process like a lot of manufacturers are. I'm playing around and learning a lot about sustainable manufacturing methods, and I'm learning from brands like Audi and they're stepping into their electric vehicles and how they're approaching that. But for Haydenshapes, we started by putting solar, and we're 85% powered by solar in this building. That was step 1. Step 2 is also reducing the waste that we creating in the board building process and reusing that waste and turning those into functional products that we can sell and put with the boards. So one of those products is using all the offcuts of the fiberglass and building fins out of them. And so it's looking at simple ways to be more sustainable in the manufacturing process while I'm learning about how to implement and use materials like, say, recycled PET from plastic bottles into the board design and achieve the performance of the board that I would like to achieve and not compromise on that. As a family, we would always go camping down the south coast of New South Wales, and my mum thought it would be the best way to entertain me for hours on end on the beach. So she got my brother aboard one year and then found out that I was totally obsessed with it. And the next year for Christmas and my birthday, I got my first surfboard, which was a hot buttered Terry Fitzgerald leopard print rail board, which I always remember. I wish I had it today, but I don't, unfortunately.
And that was at the age of about 4, right?
5, I got my board, but I was riding my brother's board at about 4. So my introduction to surfing was go follow those guys out there and don't annoy me for the next 4 hours. And I didn't. I was very, very kind of patient with wanting to just stay in the water and play around and learn how to surf.
You mended your first surfboard with your dad. I think it was a few years later. You were living in suburban Sydney, not near the beach, but by the age of 12 you discovered there was a bus to the beach, which you regularly got on. By the age of 15, your obsession with surfing was totally entrenched, from what I can understand. Interestingly, that caused quite a bit of tension with your parents at the time.
Yeah, well, obviously going to high school and learning all the business studies, chemistry, all the standard subjects. A career path that my mum wanted me to go down was being an accountant or an actuary or something proper. Something proper, as they put the inverted commas on. I feel like after I shaped my first board in my school holidays, which was my work experience surfboard, I found an outlet that everything made sense, and it was everything I was learning in business studies, design and technology, a bit of architectural CAD drawing. Everything came together in the surfboard that I could actually build and learn how to build with my hands, and then actually go out and surf myself. And that whole design process started to make a bit of sense, as well as then applying the business side of things to it. So board number 2, I was selling to my best mate, making probably $10 profit from it. And then next board after that was teachers at the school, and then it was someone that I didn't know at a party was starting to buy a board for myself. And naturally the business just evolved board by board. I feel like it still is evolving board by board, just obviously 20 years on, or 22 years on, so I think this year.
And although in year 10 you did arrange to go to the surfboard factory for your official work experience for your school program, you did end up agreeing, I understand, to do the accounting firm thing just to placate your mother, right?
Well, that was the first idea. It's like, I broke my surfboard summer holidays, how about I do work experience year 10 at a surfboard factory? Great. That got shut down, but I wasn't going to take that as an answer. So I actually did work experience in my Easter school holidays, and I actually went into the city for real work experience. And I basically filed letters in the mailbox. It was boring as anything. Yep. But being hands-on in a surfboard factory, it was something that everything came to life from what I was learning, and what I've probably grown up appreciating about my surfboards and products and the design of those boards.
Tell us more about that moment that Haydenshapes was born at the age of 15.
I feel like Haydenshapes was born kind of with the first board, but when I think it was board number 3, I printed my own logo. So I digitally printed my own logo on the inkjet printer at home, and that's when the Haydenshapes logo, which has changed a little bit since then, but that's where I feel like the brand and the brand name was set and created, and from there on it just slowly it evolved.
Yeah, you said you were kind of shaping boards for friends, making a bit of money here and there for what, about 6 or 7 years, I think, and this was in other people's factories at that point in time, right?
Yep.
At the age of 22, your dream came through. You decided that you would open up your own factory, and yet there was a day there that you describe of being at rock bottom. You're on the factory floor in tears, a collapsed roof is on your head, literally. You've got no money, you're completely alone. What was so overwhelming about that moment, and why?
I guess making the decision to move away from contract manufacturers where the quality of the boards and the customer service or the turnaround times was out of my hands. I wanted to control that a lot better, and that was the next stage for me to evolve in the business sense of building surfboards. And so I had this idea, rent a factory. I've never laminated boards start to finish, which is the second part of the board building process, but hey, I'll learn, I can figure it out surely. And it was very overwhelming because I did a marketing trip, took team riders to Indonesia and Japan, and spent all my money and came back and pretty much built a factory from the ground up by myself. A little bit of help from a brother-in-law. But when the roof of the shaping bay fell down on top of me and I was trying to put up the roof of my own shaping bay with a hammer and nails, it was just that moment where I was in pain, but it was just a little bit overwhelming, realising that every step forward was going to be for myself and I had no one else to rely on. So every decision, every sort of activity that I was going to do or every project that I was going to take on was, what I was doing was the direct outcome of what that was going to be. So it was probably just that sense of, all right, I'm in the deep end now and I've got to learn how to swim, because parts of that process, I'd never run my own factory before. I'm 22 years old, I've got now rent to pay. whereas previously I only paid rent board by board. So that's where I feel like the first sense of maturity came to the business, and I started to have to evolve my decision making to, you know, grow up a little bit and start paying rent, employ people, and evolve as a business.
And just explain a little bit further, I mean, why did you want that surfboard factory so badly at that point in time? At a time when your mother was still saying, surfing is not a business, it's not a career, it's a hobby, but you were very definite about why you needed that factory then.
I wanted to control quality. That was the key thing. And for me, it's always started with the product. Going out and marketing the boards, the best form of marketing that I've always found is word of mouth marketing. The guys on the beach and girls on the beach riding a board saying to their best friend, that was the best board I've ever ridden. That's the best form of marketing there is, hands down. So that all stems from quality product and the design of the product. And for me to have more control around that, I had to own my own factory. And then that also sparked the concept that once I had my factory, I had nothing unique. And I realised that I was like every other surfboard factory with nothing unique from a product offering, and that's where I went on the journey to design the FutureFlex construction, which was the parabolic carbon fibre frame surfboard.
Yeah, that was in about 2006. Was there something wrong with surfboards that you identified at the time and thought, oh, actually, I've got to change that? Was there a light bulb moment, as you know, we like to think inventors and entrepreneurs like to have?
The moment was when I realised that, you know, I'm in this factory, I'm building, say, 10 boards a week. I don't have anything unique. That was the moment where I realised that, what about if I design a technology like Dolby Digital? For myself, I grew up playing around with stereo systems, and whether it be a Sony or a Panasonic, Dolby Digital as surround sound was applied to that home theatre system. And I thought, well, if I design a technology, I could license that to all the other shapers in the industry, and then my boards could be ridden by everyone. It was my way to go from building 10 boards a week to building thousands of boards a week and having everyone around the world ride them. And that was the concept to commercialise the FutureFlex construction. And I went at that for around 3 to 4 years. But I landed myself in trouble in the sense that I couldn't pay my bills, and I was, you know, almost $500,000 in debt and pretty much bankrupt. And that was for a number of reasons. One, I wasn't able to produce enough boards in my factory in Mona Vale. And two, I was licensing it to other surfboard shapers who were then in control of the supply and the sales of the boards. If they didn't fully support it, I wouldn't have the volume and the turnover and the sales. Now, I thought that was the best way to commercialise the technology, but I feel that in hindsight, I should have been confident in the Haydenshapes brand and in my own shapes and designs that they were good enough to take worldwide and to take, you know, have the surfers experience those, you know, unique shapes and designs like the Hypto Crypto, and launch the technology exclusively with Haydenshapes. But they're the lessons that you learn. You're never going to be successful from, you know, the first shot. You know, maybe you will on some projects, but I've always learnt that you're going to evolve and you learn, for me, board by board.
It's interesting because your FutureFlex technology, I mean, the world had never seen anything like it. In some ways, I think you're underplaying it there, because people were really wowed by what you produced and they loved the product. I think it's quite fascinating that it was that product that ended up landing you in a situation where you were almost bankrupt.
Yeah, the technology has been my biggest failure as well as my biggest success. And that's kind of pretty crazy to think that, you know, if you were to launch that, someone could have told you, hey, you're going to fail at this before you actually become successful at it. And I guess that's where I always came back to my own personal experience writing the technology, and I knew it was something different. It gave me a better experience personally. And I know from the feedback of shaping it for other customers around the world that they also had the same experience. So when I was faced with that crucial point in time where do you just shut up doors and move on and probably go do what my mum told me to do and go back to university and you'd go down a different career path, I was stubborn enough to say, well, no.
So you didn't consider that?
No, well, of course you consider it, but no. I love building surfboards. So I've always said, I reckon if I failed at building surfboards, I'd just go back to building surfboards.
Right.
And probably learn. And I guess that's what I hopefully will continue.
But even that bold vision that you described of the way you said you could make 10 surfboards, but you wanted to make thousands, that's cool. At the time was really innovative thinking for a surfboard shaper, right? Surfboard shapers traditionally kind of bottom of the food chain, making enough money to, you know, support their surfing habit. It sounded like you had quite a different mentality.
Yeah, I guess culturally, a lot of surfers started building surfboards so they could continue surfing. And that's how the industry has evolved. But with that evolution, there is that opportunity then to I guess, evolve the industry and to, I guess, take it into its next phase and, you know, improve a few of those sides of things. And I thought that was best going to be done through the design of the product and use newer composite materials to construct the board out of, which would then give the surfer a better experience.
And the board looked different as well.
Yeah, so it's the visual side of it, it's the aesthetics, which I feel like is a very important part of the board. You know, surfboards are quite emotionally sort of like influential on the surfer. If the board looks good, you think it's going to ride well. It's not always the case, but you got to start there. I guess surfers are very judgmental with surfboards. Sometimes they look at them and go, I don't want to ride that board. But, you know, it's a very important part of how it makes you feel as a surfer to want to go ride the board. Ultimately, it's the function and the performance of the board, which hands down will trump any bad-looking board out there. But if you get both of those right, it really can set you apart as a shaper and sort of create a unique identity for yourself.
You mentioned the Hypto Cryptos. This is your worldwide bestseller, and it was several years ago you won Surfboard Maker of the Year in the United States as an Aussie board maker and Aussie brand. That was quite a coup, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I was very honoured to be voted by your peers in the industry for that award, and I guess it was on the back end of people experiencing that board and really loving how it surfs. And it wasn't just the shape; it was the shape and the technology which made it special. And I feel like that's the part that surfboard shapers have not always focused on. They've focused on shape and not necessarily progressed technology. But in today's climate in our industry, shapers are out there designing technologies as well as boards, which is exciting. And I feel like that's something that the Hypto Crypto did influence for our industry. It
kind of kicked off this wave of innovation across the whole industry.
Yeah, and it's made the industry way more exciting. It's been way more open in terms of accepting design ideas. And that's a fun industry to be working in. So if the Hypto Crypto Future Flex, was a board that helped, spark, that next sort of wave of innovation in our industry, it was on the back end of other technologies being released into the marketplace and maybe not being as successful commercially, but still influencing even myself to think that technology is a way that you can progress the surfboard industry.
When you become successful, your name's up in lights, naturally polarization follows. How did you experience that, especially after you won Surfboard of the Year in the US? And what do you do with the haters? What do you do about it?
I mean, I've grown up, and I feel like I grew up luckily in a time where culturally surfing was quite raw and harsh. It was probably coming to the tail end, late 80s and early 90s. It was still very much, you're on my beach. I didn't grow up on a beach, so everywhere I surfed was not my beach. And so I experienced the sense of like, hey, you're on my beach, like stay away from my waves, like get out of here kind of vibes. And so growing up from the age of 4, like feeling that energy and learning how to deal with that. Then when I started making surfboards and never ever working for anyone, and being a 16-year-old kid on the northern beaches starting to shape boards and attract customers, you then feel the energy of all the other surfboard shapers just on Darley Street here that, what are you doing? Like, hey, they're my customers, who are you? And that, I guess, probably, gave me a bit of experience in how to deal with, what would come along with winning, Surfboard of the Year in the US. And the way that some people in the industry, and it's like the 0.5% of the industry. And I mean, it is very confronting, but it's very real. And I guess it does keep you pretty level in the sense that you've got to be great at what you do. You've got to be confident in what you do to be able to sort of handle that level of, I guess, attack from other board builders.
It seems that independence and desire for control was a real instinct that seemed to drive a lot of your business decisions along the way, and again, providing a lot of ups and down moments. Tell me how Danielle, your now wife, ended up coming into the business and for the two of you to be creating such a formidable partnership now.
Yeah, I feel like, the way that I've made those decisions is kind of how I was brought up. It's in my nature to be like that. And when I met Danielle, I was at a party in Bondi, and we pretty much joined at the hip ever since that day. And it was about after almost 2 years, she was already helping me out and giving me advice, and giving me a different perspective on what I was doing, which was great. She was also building a lot of confidence in the fact that the technology and the path that I was on was a great path, because when I met her was the point when I was pretty much bankrupt. So it was a very challenging time for myself personally, and we grew together. And I feel like it came to that point where I was like, well, we have this new distribution deal. This is in the phase of after making that decision of, well, I'm pretty much bankrupt, I've got to change. I landed a global partnership with a global distributor and a manufacturing relationship with a factory over in Thailand. And I said to Danny, well, let's move to America. Let's set the foundations of the brand over in the US. Let's do that together. She always had dreams coming from countryside Adelaide to go to America and work there. And I said, well,
she already had a very strong marketing background.
Yeah, she had a great marketing background, a great vision on, how to kind of, be different and kind of tell that story of being different and that uniqueness that I'd sort of created with the technology. And she knew how to, and she had a vision of how to evolve that and bring that into the sense of the brand and what the brand is and what we are, which is pretty much on the foundations of what I'm interested in. And so we went over to America and, pretty much, took on the US market and felt like we're at ground zero again. It was a really cool experience. And today we work in the business together, and it's a great balance. It's challenging working with your partner because you're around each other 24/7. That comes with a lot of challenges, but at the same time, we're uniquely very different and in our skill set as well as our personalities. And it's just compromising, but also blending those two personalities together and skill sets together. And when we do that well, it's like we really enjoy that working relationship as well as the projects and the partnerships that we work on.
You, as we've talked about, you were a first generation surfer in your family, no connections, no fathers or grandfathers or mothers or grandmothers who surfed. How do you think that ended up influencing the path that you took in the surfing industry and the business decisions you made along the way? Knowing nothing, basically.
Knowing nothing growing up surfing and not having my dad or my mother, telling me what's right or what's wrong meant that I had to just learn my own lessons. And it's through learning those lessons that I've evolved as a person and made my decisions to follow whatever just interests me. And I feel like that's what I've always done. I've always applied my own personal interests and inspiration from sometimes outside of the surf industry, a lot of time within the surf industry and the surfers that I shape boards for. But it's really absorbing everything that I'm personally interested in and have come across and bringing that back into that Haydenshapes brand. And it just really is showing me that I don't need to follow a certain path. I just do what I really like to do and do that well and put a lot of time and thought into that and make good decisions from a product point of view, and it evolves from there, and then I guess we run with it. It doesn't always happen smoothly.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of hard work and
Sure.
a lot of nights where you're kind of very nervous, chewed your fingernails, you're crying,
Yeah. And the decisions only get bigger, the bigger you get, right?
I feel like as I've evolved and coming into the third decade of being in business, I feel like I'm almost more challenged now than what I've ever been, in the sense that there's a preconceived idea of who we are as a brand. There's a preconceived idea of maybe what board I should launch next, as well as then you have, quite a solid, you have a business that's got foundations and people that live and breathe and their
Where
families.
Before you had nothing to lose, now you have
nothing
everything,
to lose.
right?
There's a lot more to lose. There's your staff that you sort of got to think about in your decision making process. So, and there's customers too. So you want to listen to your customers, but you also want to give them something that they don't know that they want. So it's a balance between all these different things that come at you, and I feel like when you do your best work is when you put that barrier up and you go into it in the same attitude as I did 10 years ago, and with the blinkers on and the mindset that I've got nothing to lose and I should go after like what feels natural and what I like as a person from a design point of view.
Now that it's clear you have made a career and have a global business from starting out shaping surfboards, was there a moment your mum finally admitted that she was wrong? It was that, you know, she always said it was a hobby. You certainly proved that she was wrong. Did she ever admit it?
Yeah.
Was there a moment when?
I guess when the first AFR article came out. She's studied economics at university, and she loves to read business sections of
She's a great entrepreneur and businesswoman herself.
Yeah, she is. She is amazing. I guess my mum's fears came from the unknown of what is it like to run a business in the surfboard industry. You know, the track record is that it's going to be quite different to, you know, going to university and following a traditional professional career path. So it was more out of, I guess, the protection that she didn't want me to have to deal with probably some of the stresses that maybe her dad dealt with being in business.
And as a parent now yourself, you know, I'm sure you can relate to that even more than you ever have.
Well, I've seen the what it is like to experience, you know, being in business and having to fend for yourself and doing all of that. I feel like it's made my life very interesting and enjoyable to wake up every day, and challenging to wake up every day and go at it. But I wouldn't change a thing with that. And I feel like the reason why I wouldn't change it is because it's all on the back end of like a passion for surfing and that interest in surfing. So as long as, you know, my kids follow their interests and their passions, I guess I'll try and help guide them down a path. I'm already pushing Aliyah into waves, and she's not even 2 years old, so I'm trying to steer the path a little bit.
Suddenly you relate to your mum wanting a certain path to be followed, yeah.
Yeah, I guess it would be cool to have a business that, you know, my children could work in, you know, and pass on down through the generations. That would be an amazing legacy to pass on, but only if that's something that they would personally be interested in.
Now tell us about one of your most memorable surfing experiences, of which there would have been many.
Well, it was by myself. I drove, you know, maybe 18 hours down from California into Baja Desert, and tackled and went to a wave that only a couple of my friends know about, and surfed there by myself in the most perfect waves. And yeah.
Is that the ultimate for a surfer, to actually just be alone somewhere really remote in the world?
It's a very calming sort of experience of just, you know, being by yourself out there, you know, walking a couple of hours into a wave, drive 15, 16 or 18 hours down the coast, and go get amazing waves and perfect waves. And by yourself, it's
and what do you think
different.
About when you're out on the board by yourself? Hopefully
how
not
my board's
surfboard
riding.
design, no doubt.
I don't have a surf where I don't think about my board. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's a really interesting one, because when you surf, time stops. And it's very cliche to say that, but it really does happen. And it's a way, you know, people meditate to get into that mindset, to break away from everything that's happening. And when you surf and ride a wave, and especially when the conditions are absolutely amazing, you're not thinking of anything else but this natural instinct of riding the wave. And for me, creating boards that enable that, it's an extension of the surfer. And that's the part that I really love and break down and try and get perfectly right, where the surfer's not thinking about what they're riding under their feet. It's just naturally happening for them.
Hayden Cox, thank you so much for joining me for this interview today. Thanks.
Thank you.